They said it started on a night when the rain would not stop. The kind of rain that beat the tin roofs of the small roadside bar until it sounded like 1,000 angry drummers had gathered outside. The neon sign at the entrance flickered with half-dead light, the words cold beer glowing and vanishing in intervals, as though even electricity was afraid of the shadows gathered inside. People packed into the place to escape the storm, truckers, bikers, and weary travelers whose shoes were soaked through. No one expected that night to end with silence, so heavy it could crush the soul. At the corner of the bar sat Kareen, a woman most people overlooked. She wasn't the type to turn heads. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun. Her clothes were simple, and she ordered nothing more than a glass of water, because money was scarce. She worked long hours at the diner down the street, and came here only when she needed a moment to sit where no one knew her name. The storm had driven her in, but fate had other plans. The door slammed open, letting in a gust of wind and rain, followed by the heavy boots of 3 bikers. Their leather jackets dripped, their beards were thick, and their laughter was loud enough to rattle the glass bottles behind the counter. They carried trouble the way wolves carry hunger, visible, inevitable. People shifted nervously, but no one dared stare too long. Everyone knew bikers like them own fear. One of them, taller than the others and reeking of whiskey, spotted Kareen. He grinned the way a predator does when it finds prey too weak to run. His boots scraped across the floor as he walked toward her, ignoring the bartender's quiet warning glance. Kareen felt his shadow fall over her. She looked down, hoping silence would shield her, but it didn't. "You look too clean for a place like this," he sneered, leaning so close she could smell the rain in his leather and the sour alcohol on his breath. "What are you hiding under there, sweetheart?" His hand shot out before she could protest, grabbing the front of her shirt and ripping it with a violent jerk. The sound of tearing fabric sliced through the bar like a gunshot. Gasps filled the air, a chair clattered to the ground, and time seemed to stop. Because on Kareen's chest, etched in ink across her skin, was the unmistakable emblem of the United States Marine Corps. The eagle, globe, and anchor gleamed with authority, even beneath the dim light of the bar. The biker's grin faltered, his hand still clutching the torn fabric as though frozen mid-crime. The bar went dead silent. Every trucker, every traveler, even the bartender, stared. But the tattoo was not just a decoration. It was a brand earned with blood. And those who knew, truly knew, understood that anyone wearing it was no ordinary woman. Kareen's eyes lifted to meet the bikers, and in them was no fear. Only a cold fire that made the man step back instinctively. "You made a mistake," she whispered, her voice calm, steady, yet carrying a weight that pressed against everyone's chest. But tragedy has a way of waiting in shadows, biding its time. The biker's pride would not allow retreat. He laughed, though it was weaker now, masking the chill creeping up his spine. "A tattoo doesn't scare me, sweetheart. Marines bleed just like anyone else." His hand reached for her arm again. The bartender spoke quickly, his words tripping over themselves. "Man, you don't understand. That's not just any Marine. That's Kareen Callahan." A murmur rippled through the bar, whispers rising like restless ghosts. Some of the older men sat straighter, eyes wide, as though hearing the name of a legend they thought long gone. The biker's bravado wavered, but his pride chained him to his foolishness. He shoved Kareen's shoulder, harder this time. "Then let's see if the legend still fights." The bar held its breath. Kareen slowly stood, her shirt hanging in shreds, her tattoo bare for all to see. She wasn't tall, and she wasn't built like the bikers. Yet there was something in the way she moved, precise, measured, like a storm tightening its grip before unleashing destruction. The thunder outside seemed to answer her rise, rumbling so loud the glasses on the counter trembled. The biker smirked again, but sweat rolled down his temple. He balled his fists. He never saw the first strike. Kareen moved faster than eyes could follow. Her hand snapped forward, slamming into his throat with surgical precision. He staggered back, clutching his neck, gasping for breath. The other 2 bikers rose instantly, their chairs screeching against the floor, and the bar erupted in chaos. People scrambled to get out of the way. The bartender ducked. Thunder roared louder as fists swung, glass shattered, and boots slammed against wood. Kareen fought like a woman possessed, like someone who had buried friends in foreign soil and carried ghosts on her back. Every strike was sharp, brutal, final. But this night was only beginning, and beneath the roar of the storm, something darker was coming. Something that would make the tattoo on her chest more than a symbol. It would become a curse. The storm outside seemed to grow teeth, each crash of thunder echoing the violence inside the bar. Kareen's strikes were precise, her body moving like it remembered battles long past. Battles not fought in smoky rooms, but in deserts and jungles where silence followed the dead. Her elbow cracked against the second biker's jaw, sending him sprawling into a table that splintered beneath his weight. The third lunged at her with a broken beer bottle, shards glittering in the dim light. For a moment, Kareen saw not a bar but a flash of memory, sand whipping her face, comrades shouting, an enemy charging with a blade. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She sidestepped, twisted his wrist until the bottle fell, and drove her knee into his ribs with a sickening crunch. Gasps rose from the onlookers. The bikers, the predators who thought they owned the night, lay scattered and groaning at her feet. But victory was not silent. It drew attention, and attention in Kareen's life always meant danger. The first biker, still clutching his throat, managed to rasp out words that chilled the room. You shouldn't be here. Callahan. Kareen froze. The way he said her name, like he knew it, tightened something in her chest. People had whispered it, yes, but few dared say it with such venom. She crouched down, grabbed his collar, and hissed into his face, "Where did you hear that name?" His bloodied smile was all teeth and spite. "You think your past doesn't crawl behind you? You think they forgot?" He coughed, spitting red onto the floor. "They're coming for you. They never forgave what you did overseas." The room seemed to shrink. Kareen's grip loosened, as though his words carried more weight than his body ever could. Her eyes flickered, haunted, to the rain-drenched window. A trucker in the corner whispered, "What's he talking about?" The biker chuckled weakly. "Tell them, Marine. Tell them what kind of tragedy you really are." The bar held its breath. Kareen stood slowly, her knuckles raw, her chest rising and falling with something deeper than exertion. The tattoo on her skin burned, not with pride this time, but with the memory of a mission gone wrong, of screams that never left her ears, of fire and betrayal. "I said shut up," she growled, her voice trembling against a tide of emotions threatening to swallow her. But the biker laughed, a broken, coughing laugh that echoed louder than it should have. "They'll find you, Callahan. They always do." At that moment, lightning flashed against a window, revealing more than storm clouds outside. Parked across the road were black vans, unmarked, their engines humming low. Figures sat inside, silhouettes unmoving, watching the bar with cold patience. Kareen's stomach dropped. The past she had outrun for years had finally caught up. The bartender whispered, "Kareen, who are they?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. All she knew was that every soul in that bar was now trapped in a storm far worse than the one raging outside, because those men in the vans weren't here for the bikers. They were here for her. The hum of those black vans outside cut through the noise of the storm, like a predator's growl waiting to pounce. No one inside the bar moved. No one breathed too loud. The bikers lay groaning on the floor, broken but still alive, yet their laughter, faint wheezing, lingered like they already knew the ending of the story. Kareen's fists clenched and unclenched. Her pulse hammered in her ears, louder than the rain. She had prayed, begged even, that this day would never come. But once ghosts catch your scent, you can't shake them off. The bartender's voice trembled. "Kareen, what's happening?" She didn't answer. Her eyes locked on the door. The storm outside roared. The neon sign sputtered one last time before dying in a hiss of sparks, plunging the bar into shadows. Then came the sound, boots splashing through puddles, steady, synchronized. Not drunk stumbles, not biker bravado. Military steps, cold, rehearsed. The door didn't slam open. It opened quietly, too quietly, and that silence was worse than violence. 5 men in black tactical gear stepped inside, dripping rainwater, weapons cradled like extensions of their arms. Their faces were hidden beneath visors, their movement mechanical. Target acquired. One of them said into his earpiece, voice flat, without soul. His gaze locked on Kareen. The bar erupted into whispers. Some of the truckers raised their hands instinctively, as though surrender could shield them. The bartender ducked behind the counter. The bikers, even in pain, smiled like devils who had summoned demons. Kareen stepped forward, bare chest scar with a Marine Corps emblem, water dripping from her torn shirt. "Leave them out of this," she said, her voice breaking but steady. "This is between me and you." One of the men tilted his head. "Negative. Orders are to erase all witnesses." The words fell like a death sentence. Gasps shot through the crowd. A woman screamed. Someone tried to bolt for the back door, only to be shoved down by another agent stepping in through the rear entrance. The bar was sealed tight like a coffin. Kareen's blood went cold. This was it. The nightmare she carried, the secret she buried. Years ago, on a mission that went wrong, civilians had died under her command. Not by accident, by orders. She had disobeyed, fought against it, and vanished when she realized the truth. But the people behind it never vanished. They erased threats, silenced memories, burned anyone who dared stand in their way. And now they had come to finish what she escaped. Her jaw tightened. "Then you'll have to kill me first." The leader raised his weapon. The storm outside wailed, lightning flashing across the room. For a heartbeat, everyone was frozen between breath and death. Then Kareen moved. She flipped the nearest table, the crash of glass, and was shattering the stillness. Bullets tore through the bar, bottles exploding in showers of liquor and fire as a lantern toppled. Screams filled the room as people dug for cover. Smoke and gunpowder mixed with the scent of rain and burning alcohol. Kareen fought with the ferocity of a cornered wolf. She tackled one agent, slamming his helmeted head against the counter until the visor cracked. She grabbed his weapon and fired blind into the smoke, forcing the others back. But tragedy is merciless. One of the stray rounds found its mark, not in an agent, not in Kareen, but in a young woman huddled near the jukebox. She fell, clutching her stomach, blood pooling fast. A hush of horror cut through the chaos. The woman's friend screamed, crawling to her side. People stared at Kareen, not as a savior, but as a curse that had dragged death into their lives. Kareen froze, gun in hand, chest heaving. Her heart twisted. She wanted to run to the woman to help, but another volley of bullets forced her back. The agents advanced through the smoke like shadows made flesh. The bartender's voice cracked in panic. "Kareen, you're going to get us all killed." And maybe he was right. Maybe she already had. The smoke grew thicker, curling into the rafters, stinging eyes and throats. Fire licked along the shattered bar counter where whiskey had spilled, crackling against the storm's howls outside. The trapped crowd screamed and clawed for safety, but there was nowhere to go. The black-clad agents closed in like wolves, rifles sweeping, eyes hidden but cold as stone. Kareen ducked behind an overturned table, chest heaving, heart pounding like war drums. Her hands shook as she reloaded the stolen rifle. The screams around her cutting deep. She could hear the young woman near the jukebox whimpering, her friends sobbing beside her. That sound tore Kareen apart worse than bullets ever could. The leader's voice boomed through the smoke. "Surrender, Callahan, or they all die." Kareen clenched her jaw, sweat mixing with soot on her face. She thought of the desert, years back, the mission that ruined her. She had been ordered to clear a village, harboring insurgents. She refused, knowing they were civilians. Her commanding officer didn't hesitate. Fire rained down anyway. Dozens of innocents dead. Children, mothers. And when Kareen reported it, thinking justice would come, she learned the truth. It was no accident. It was a cover-up. They had called her insubordinate, unstable. They had branded her a liability. That was the night she disappeared. And now the shadows had finally found her. "I'm not letting you erase me," she growled, voice low and broken. The agents advanced. One moved too close. Kareen sprang, driving her shoulder into his ribs, the rifle swinging like a club. She smashed him into a wall, took his sidearm, and shot another clean to the chest. The crowd shrieked as blood sprayed against the floorboards. But for every agent she dropped, Two more surged forward. Bullets shredded wood and glass. A trucker screamed as his arm was torn open. A bartender ducked too late. A round tore into his leg, and he collapsed behind the counter. The massacre had begun, and Kareen's presence had cursed them all. She fired wildly, the recoil bruising her shoulder, her breaths ragged. She fought like a woman who knew she was already damned, who only wanted to drag her enemies into hell with her. But tragedy hunts indiscriminately. One agent hurled a grenade into the center of the bar. The metallic clink as it bounced across the floor froze everyone in horror. Kareen's instinct screamed. She dove, grabbed it, and hurled it toward the entrance just as it detonated. The blast ripped the door from its hinges, flames and debris scattering across the night. The shock wave knocked patrons off their feet, ears ringing, smoke choking their lungs. The survivors clawed for escape through the blasted doorway, trampling one another in desperation. Kareen tried to cover them, laying down fire, but the agents cut them down mercilessly. A man fell clutching his throat. Another collapsed screaming as bullets riddled his back. The bar that had once echoed with drunken laughter now writhed with agony and death. Kareen's rage drowned her. She roared, charging headlong into the smoke, firing until the rifle clicked empty, then swinging it like a club until the stock splintered. She tore a knife from an agent's belt and carved her way forward, blood hot against her skin. But even as she fought, she knew this was no rescue. This was an extermination. In the chaos, the leader never fired a shot. He stood in the smoke, visor reflecting the fire, calm as a god watching ants burn. When Kareen's eyes locked on his, the world seemed to fall silent again. "Why me?" she rasped, knife dripping, body trembling. He tilted his head. "Because you live when they were meant to die." The weight of those words crushed her. The village, the innocence, the cover-up, her friends. Every nightmare she carried, they weren't accidents. They were deliberate, and her survival was the only loose thread. Kareen staggered, bile rising in her throat. Around her, bodies littered the floor, agents, patrons, bikers, innocents. Screams faded to sobs, sobs to silence. The fire crept higher, smoke choking the last breaths out of the room. And for the first time, Kareen felt the crushing truth. She wasn't fighting to save anyone anymore. She was fighting to stop her story from being erased. The leader raised his pistol, aiming square at her heart. Lightning split the sky. The flames spread fast, hungry and merciless, devouring wood, liquor, and flesh alike. Smoke churned thick, black, suffocating. The cries of the wounded thinned into silence as the fire smothered oxygen from the air. Glass shattered, beams cracked, the building groaned like a dying beast. Kareen's lungs burned with every breath, but she stood, bloodied, clothes torn to rags, the Marine Corps tattoo on her chest gleaming with sweat and ash. Her knife dripped red, her eyes locked on the leader, who stood untouched, pistol steady, visor reflecting her like a ghost. Around them, flames framed the scene like a painting of hell. "On your knees," he ordered, his voice calm, almost gentle, though it cut sharper than any blade. Kareen's chest heaved. She glanced at the bodies around her, the young woman by the jukebox, lifeless now, the bartender motionless behind the counter, bikers twisted on the floor in broken heaps. They had all died because of her shadow, because she lived. Her grip on the knife faltered. For a moment, she considered surrender, not out of fear, but out of guilt. Maybe if she stopped fighting, maybe if she let them erase her, the blood debt would end here. But then the smoke parted for a heartbeat, and she saw a reflection in a shard of glass. Not her scarred, broken body, but the emblem burned into her skin, the eagle, globe, and anchor, a reminder, not of pride, not anymore, but of duty. And duty meant standing, even when the world demanded you kneel. "No," she said, voice raw, cutting through fire and storm. The leader's visor tilted slightly, as if amused. "Then burn with them." He fired. The shot cracked like thunder, slamming into her shoulder. Kareen staggered, pain blinding white. She dropped to one knee, knife slipping from her grip, clattering on the burning floor. Blood streamed down her arm. But she wasn't finished. with her good hand. She grabbed the broken rifle stock, pushed herself up, and charged the fire and smoke like a wraith. The leader raised his pistol again, but she swung first, with smashing into his faceplate, shattering the visor. The man stumbled back, helmet cracking open to reveal pale, scarred skin and cold blue eyes that carried no soul. For the first time, Kareen saw his face, and recognition stabbed her deeper than the bullet wound. It was Captain Hale, her old commanding officer, the one who had given the order to burn the village, the man she had reported, the man she thought had vanished when the truth was buried. "You!" she hissed, choking on blood. "It was you." His smile was thin, cruel. "You should have died with them, Callahan. You were never meant to crawl out of that fire." The words crashed into her like a hammer, the weight of betrayal heavier than any wound. He had been the one. The massacre, the cover-up, the ghost that haunted her every night. And now he stood here, alive, erasing the last witness to his sins. Rage surged hotter than the fire around her. She screamed, a sound ripped from her soul, and drove the rifle stock into his jaw. He staggered, dropped his pistol. Kareen lunged to the knife, blood smearing the floor beneath her. But tragedy doesn't pause for revenge. Above, the burning rafters gave way with a deafening crack. A beam fell between them, flames exploding upward, cutting her off from Hale. He stood on the other side, face shadowed, eyes gleaming through smoke. "We'll finish this," he promised, retreating into the fire as the surviving agents dragged him back. Kareen clawed toward him, coughing, blood pouring from her wound, but the inferno roared higher, swallowing him whole. She collapsed, body shaking, vision blurring. Around her, the bar was gone, nothing but collapsing wood and screaming fire. The storm outside wailed, rain hammering against the ruins, but the fire refused to die. And in that burning hell, Kareen whispered through clenched teeth, "I'll find you, Hale, even if it kills me." The world went black. When Kareen woke, it was the crackle of dying embers and the hiss of rain steaming against charred wood. The bar was gone, reduced to a skeleton of black beams and smoldering ash. The air reeked of smoke and blood. Bodies lay twisted and unrecognizable. Faces melted into the ruin. The laughter, the music, the ordinary chatter of life, it had all been silenced. Her body screamed with pain, her shoulder burning from the bullet wound. But she forced herself upright. Every step was agony as she staggered through the rubble. She paused beside the jukebox, now nothing but a melted frame, and found the young woman who had been shot. Her hand still clutched her friend's. Kareen knelt, closed her eyes with trembling fingers, and whispered, "I'm sorry." The storm had washed much of the blood into the mud outside, but it couldn't cleanse the truth. Everyone was gone. The bartender, the truckers, the bikers, innocent people who had only wanted shelter from the rain. All of them were caught in a war they never asked for, a war that followed her. Kareen stepped into the street, the rain soaking her, mixing with ash streaks on her skin. Her shirt hung in tatters, the Marine Corps tattoo still visible, burning in the lightning flashes like a scarlet letter. Once it was a mark of honor. Now it felt like a curse. In the distance, headlights pierced the storm. Black vans rolled away into the night, shrinking into darkness. Hale was gone, but not finished. He had taken everything from her once, and tonight he had reminded her he could take more. Kareen stood in the ruins, fists clenched, tears mixing with rain. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. "You'll answer for this, Hale. Every ghost, every scream, every fire. I'll carry them, and I'll bring them back to you." Lightning split the sky again, illuminating her alone in the wreckage, broken, bloodied, surrounded by death, but not defeated. The storm swallowed her figure as she limped into the night, a shadow carrying tragedy in her wake, and a promise burning hotter than the flames she left behind. The bar would never be rebuilt. The townsfolk would whisper about that night for years, of the quiet woman with the Marine tattoo, of the bikers, the fire, the black vans. Some would call her cursed. Others would call her a hero. But Kareen knew the truth. She was both. And somewhere, Hale was waiting. Some scars are not warnings of what we survived, but promises of the fire still chasing us.